What happens when a single map posted by a US government agency appears to redraw one of the world's most dangerous fault lines? Within 72 hours, a digital image shared by the United States Trade Representative triggered a formal diplomatic protest from Pakistan and was quietly removed. The controversy centers on Kashmir, a region disputed for more than 7 decades, involving 3 nuclear-armed states and multiple wars. This video breaks down how a seemingly technical graphic became a geopolitical flashpoint with implications far beyond social media. If this incident had not been corrected, it could have reshaped perceptions of Washington's position on one of the most sensitive territorial disputes in the world. Maps issued by official institutions carry political meaning even when they contain no labels. When the USTR posted a map alongside an announcement of an interim US-India trade framework, the outline depicted the entire Jammu and Kashmir region within Indian boundaries, including areas administered by Pakistan such as Azad Jammu and Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan. It also included Aksai Chin, a territory controlled by China but claimed by India. In regions where borders are contested, cartography is not neutral. It can signal alignment, recognition, or policy shifts, whether intended or not. The map appeared online on Friday evening and remained visible through the weekend. By Monday evening, the first working day after the weekend, it had been removed. Diplomatic sources indicate that Pakistan lodged a protest both with the US Embassy in Islamabad and with State Department officials in Washington. The concern conveyed was that the depiction contradicted the long-standing US position that Jammu and Kashmir is disputed territory whose final status should be determined in accordance with United Nations Security Council resolutions. Although the USTR press release announcing the trade framework remains online, the specific image of India has been withdrawn. A separate map used in a trade release concerning Bangladesh remains publicly accessible, reinforcing the impression that the India graphic was removed in response to objections rather than as part of a broader policy revision. To understand why this matters, it is necessary to revisit the origins of the Kashmir dispute. In 1947, as British India was partitioned into India and Pakistan, princely states were given the option to accede to either dominion. Jammu and Kashmir, with a Muslim-majority population and a Hindu ruler, became the focal point of competing claims. War broke out months later. A UN-brokered ceasefire in 1949 established a line of control but did not settle sovereignty. Subsequent wars in 1965 and 1999 reinforced the territorial divide. China entered the equation after the 1962 Sino-Indian War, consolidating control over Aksai Chin, which India continues to claim. Today, the region remains divided among India, Pakistan, and China, each administering separate portions while asserting broader claims. Against this backdrop, symbolism carries weight. Pakistan's protest reportedly emphasized that any official depiction suggesting Indian sovereignty over the entire territory risks undermining the UN-recognized framework that treats Kashmir as disputed. The issue was compounded by Indian media coverage interpreting the map as evidence of a possible shift in US policy. Such narratives, even if speculative, can shape public perception and diplomatic expectations. Islamabad moved quickly to prevent that interpretation from gaining traction. The timing amplified the sensitivity. Over the same weekend, Washington and New Delhi announced a framework for the first phase of a bilateral trade agreement. According to the joint statement, the United States agreed to reduce tariffs on Indian goods to 18%, after already removing an additional 25% punitive duty. Reciprocal tariff adjustments are expected to align at similar levels. The economic dimension is significant. Bilateral trade between the two countries has grown steadily in recent years, and both sides frame the deal as a step toward deeper commercial integration. When such announcements are accompanied by visual representations of territory, even unintentionally, they intersect with strategic narratives. The controversy also resonates with developments from August 2019, when India revoked the special constitutional status of Jammu and Kashmir and reorganized the region into federally administered territories. Pakistan rejected that move as inconsistent with international law and UN resolutions. Since then, the diplomatic environment surrounding Kashmir has remained highly sensitive. Any perceived endorsement of sovereignty claims can influence domestic politics, international alignments, and regional stability. Two scenarios illustrate the stakes. First, consider what might have happened if the map had remained online without correction. Indian media interpretations suggesting a US policy shift could have hardened positions in New Delhi and complicated Washington's stated neutrality between India and Pakistan. Beijing, observing the inclusion of Aksai Chin within Indian boundaries, might have interpreted the depiction as tacit support for India's claim, adding friction to already tense Sino-American and Sino-Indian relations. In this scenario, a digital oversight could have contributed to diplomatic recalibration among three major powers. Second, consider the alternative path in which the removal signals reaffirmation of established US positions. By withdrawing the image without public commentary, Washington may be signaling continuity rather than change. This approach limits escalation while preserving space for economic engagement with India and diplomatic dialogue with Pakistan. However, the absence of an explicit explanation leaves room for speculation, and in geopolitics, ambiguity can be as consequential as clarity. The inclusion of Aksai Chin in the original depiction further complicated the situation. The plateau has been under Chinese control since the early 1960s and remains central to Sino-Indian border tensions. The United States has generally avoided taking formal positions on competing sovereignty claims in this dispute. A map implying otherwise, even inadvertently, risks being interpreted through the lens of broader US-China rivalry. In a strategic environment shaped by competition over technology, trade, and military posture, even minor symbolic gestures are scrutinized. This episode underscores how cartographic representation intersects with international law and diplomacy. Government-issued maps are not merely illustrative, they can be read as policy signals. In contested regions, the absence or presence of boundary lines can influence narratives about legitimacy and recognition. For countries directly involved, such imagery is not technical detail but political substance.